My tutor developed an obsession with me and touched me. I used a brick to stop her. Buckle in, for if this were a roller coaster, it would be the Tower of Terror. It's also quite a long narrative. Now, just to be clear, the person involved may not read Reddit, but her kid very well may. So I've changed names, locations, and precise details, but I won't describe the person's appearance. I will, however, tell you about a petty retribution that has resulted in a positive ending and is still happening. I am a 19-year-old university student in Canada studying history. Since September, I've been fighting with my physical and mental health. The issue with the free healthcare system is that there are occasionally substantial wait times for mental health services. Despite being put on medicine, my condition worsened. I had gone to a staff member named Patricia to explain the matter. Initially, she was helpful, allowing me assignment extensions and special allowances for tests. I finished the first semester with a whooping 62%, which was impressive considering I hadn't attended any lectures. After the Christmas break, my mental health deteriorated to the point that I had to be hospitalized. I also struggled to return to lectures as anticipated or submit any work. I was seeing the university's student support team, as well as the hospital's mental health staff. Patricia was fully aware of my personality problem, which causes me to struggle with emotional control at times. However, she was going above and above her customary tasks, which was becoming a little distressing. She had promised to accompany me to my doctor's visits, email me 3 to 4 times a day, and then obtain my personal phone number from the university system and begin texting me. Being foolish, I assumed that having her phone number would be beneficial, as I read my messages much more quickly than my emails. What a terrible idea. What began as a confirmation of attendance for meetings swiftly evolved into a desire to see you soon and an inquiry into how things were doing in my personal life. The event that knocked me for 6 was when she showed up at my GP surgery after I informed her that my appointment had gone badly. Fortunately, I was on the other side of town by this point, but she sent me 4 texts. I met the GP, "Where are you?" and closing with, "I'm not going to nag you," before calling me 3 times, despite the fact that I hung up the first time. A side note, at this point, she certainly cares about me, but she's really controlling. I had gone in for a routine operation at the hospital to try to improve my physical health. If you enjoy cringing, consider a cystoscopy. So she texted me, asking how it went. I'd been given the same medicines as before, and when I tried to explain to the consultant that I was already on them, and that the pain hadn't subsided in months, I became angry and frustrated. Not enough to generate a commotion, but enough for them to firmly urge me to go. I explained this to Patricia, and she said, "Stop arguing, winky face now, considering the nature of the procedure, Patricia's position of responsibility, and the fact that it is coming from her personal phone number, I thought this was completely improper." This type of activity continued for several months. I tried to keep her at arm's length. I still need her to complete homework and other tasks, but I don't want her to get involved in my personal life. But she keeps trying. She has frequently told me that owing to a lack of assignments, a fit-to-work procedure will be implemented, and that my future at the institution will be determined by whether I am suspended or expelled. This caused a lot of anxiety in my life and eventually wrecked my mental health. So after a not-so-helpful appointment with the mental health team, I submitted the worst essay I've ever written, complete with a snarky comment at the bottom, and I still received an 18%, which is considered successful. In retrospect, this was probably the worst way to get back at her, because Patricia called me in for another meeting, but not before calling my boss and my mental health consultant and demanding to attend my therapy sessions and then telling me I'm making things more difficult than it needed to be. Patricia was a nightmare to meet with. She began by stroking my knee, not sensually, but far too near for comfort, which immediately caused my back to arch. She tried to persuade me to cancel the submission, but I refused, and then threatened to terminate or penalize her if I didn't. Welcome to emotional blackmail. I tried several times to convey that I was struggling, and that it was her case of mentally fighting myself to get out of bed in the mornings. Let alone researching and writing essays, performing complex mathematics, and attending 12 lectures every week. She continued dismissing me with phrases like, "Just because you have a mental health condition doesn't mean you're special, and it took me 3 years of intensive therapy to get my brain together, so you should be okay by August." I eventually became upset, weeping and bending over. I am on my knees on the chair. This cut off circulation to my legs after 40 minutes of being imprisoned in her office. So when I eventually mustered the resolve to go, I was physically unable to bear it. I got halfway across the room before stumbling. I didn't fall, I was holding onto the table. Patricia sprung up from her chair, as if she'd won the lottery, and grabbed me from behind. I got out as fast as I could. She texted me at 10:11 p.m., saying it was quite valuable. Finally, the vengeance. I was so enraged that I determined to come down hard on this woman. I spent 8 hours collecting the year's emails and texts, annotating them all, and filing them in a folder with documentation that I was actively seeking medical care, which is a university requirement for students who are ill. I affectionately referred to the folder as the brick, because if all else fails, I'll strike her with it. This folder weighs at least 5 kilograms, which gives you an idea of how many trees I had to cut down for this. I filed a complaint form for 3 separate issues: emails and texts, blackmail and physical contact, as well as a form for harassment. This would ordinarily go to Patricia, but since I was talking about her, I forwarded it to the dean. Phase 1 is complete. Phase 2 involved analyzing her correspondence and building a case for mistreatment. After 5 months of being told that it will happen, the Fit to Work panel I attended was about to expel me until I pulled out the brick and showed them 8 incidents of unprofessionalism in one email. My punishment was reduced to simply suspension, so I still have access to my university email address and student union facilities, which was important for Phase 3. Phase 3 involved presenting my case to the university legal team and holding it over the dean's head until a suitable outcome was attained, at which point I would take it to court. So, my listeners, after successfully completing Phases 1 and 2, I can announce Patricia has taken 6 months of, quote, sick leave. Let me explain why she isn't on sick leave and has been suspended. She was meant to be on my Fit for Work panel. 3 days after being on sick leave, the entire department was ordered not to approach her and to convey any urgent matters to a different person via an online reporting system that will be more strictly monitored. We were also informed that she would not be responding to emails since she is ill, which made me giggle because she had been asking me to produce 5,000-word articles for her, despite the fact that I was actually ill. Given Patricia's function at the university, which involves managing sensitive material and dealing with vulnerable students, this will be a huge blot on her record, and it is possible that she will lose her job and be unable to find another in the same profession. I have subsequently left the university for health concerns, which were undoubtedly exacerbated by Patricia's activities. In summary, my university tutor harasses me in multiple ways, causing a significant problem. I complained with 8 months of evidence, and she was suspended and nearly dismissed. A potential legal case is pending. What a terrifying experience. Look, if there's a 5-kilogram block of paper evidence of inappropriate behavior against you, I'd say you're the problem and the jerk. While it is important for course workers to be aware of and empathetic to their students' ongoing concerns, anything beyond acting on recommendations and reading what mental health specialists say is probably far too much involvement in any single student's personal life. Good program directors will stay on top of concerns like these, offering time off or other options while staying totally professional. And it's ignoring the fact that Patricia's behavior goes much beyond tutelary care and into outright obsession, stalking, and unwanted physical contact. I can tell you that when the narrator first read about her holding you from behind while you were attempting to flee, he drew his legs up to his chest. This is just not acceptable on any level, and I'm not sure if she's a genuinely lonely and inappropriate person or an actual predator. In any case, even if her motives were simply good, she should not be in a position to act on them in this manner. It will only happen to more pupils, and our brave author ought to be recognized for persevering through their arduous health issues and at the very least having her conduct examined. Okay, my cousin is a prankster. She enjoys cracking jokes, and one of her favorites is to inform me that my uncle, her father, will be picking me up during the holidays. To be honest, my uncle is not a pleasant man. He yells at me and everyone for everything, lies about others to make them appear bad and himself look good, and mocks me for being overweight. He's incredibly verbally domineering, to the point where I've pretty much gray-rocked him, which provides no background. My cousin's favorite joke is to tell me that he is coming to pick me up to take me to family events, which I normally avoid if he is present. And 2 hours in the car with him? That is literally horrible. So a few weeks back, she lied and said he called and was coming to pick me up for my birthday. I felt like I was having a panic attack, and I remember crying, hyperventilating and pacing back and forth, trying to find a way out. And yeah, visiting him is just as horrible. Then my cousin began laughing. I told her that wasn't humorous. She understands how I feel about that man, and she asked, "Don't you feel better now that you know he's not coming?" I have not forgotten that. It's been 2 weeks, and I've had enough of that joke. I'd like to pull a prank on her to win her back. I remembered her worst fear. Clowns. She's been terrified of clowns since she was a child. So I had a friend who is almost 6 feet tall dress up in a terrifying clown suit. I told her I had received a free dinner for 2 coupon for her birthday at her favorite restaurant and wanted to share it with her to entice her. We left with my clown in place. The objective was to stop in the middle of this old rural road and park the car in a precise location where my friend was hidden. Everything happened as planned. My friend parked his old junk car in a ditch on the side of the road. I came to a halt and stated that we needed to check it out to see if they required assistance. While she looks into it and around the corner, I sneak back to my car. My clown rushes out of an abandoned barn and heads right for us. She spotted him, froze, and began screaming. She attempted to sprint to my car, but I sped away before she could get inside. I didn't abandon her instead. I drove over the hill so she couldn't see me from where the old car was and watched in my rearview mirror. She attempted to run with the clown, chasing and shouting for rescue. When the clown caught up with her, she dropped to her knees and began wailing. He laughed, admitting it was a joke. I drove back and began laughing with him. She told me it wasn't humorous, and I repeated what she said. The "don't you feel better" line. She screamed and yelled at me for the entire vehicle ride, which could have terrified me to death. I told her how I felt when she informed me about my uncle. I can literally hear an online Chad saying, "It's just a hoax, bro," again and again in my head. However, the cousin continued to play this prank with the uncle, despite the fact that it was plainly causing significant grief and trauma. So, while pranking her into believing she was literally going to die is quite extreme, the fact that the author could literally use the same catchphrase as her cousin to justify the situation was hopefully a great way to emphasize that this was not an acceptable prank to pull on a regular basis. Concerned about how difficult the cousin's life must have been living with the uncle if her parents were separated, and if he has something to do with the nasty streak she's shown in her pranks. I can see the author's prank poisoning these two against one other, but I sincerely hope that the teaching moment was received and processed, and that they can stay in touch and only utilize non-emotional torturous pranks in the future. Revenge on my terrible mother. She had no idea I was responsible for the clink. This occurred in 2004, when I was 14 years old. Before I begin, let me provide some background information. My mother is not a nice person. It was mostly verbal abuse until I was 14, at which point it became violent. As a result, I devised my own tiny punishments for her, like tampering with her food and soaking her toothbrush in the toilet every day. This is one of my finer petty revenge stories against her, and it irritated her the most. I told my friends about what she did to me, and while I appreciated their advice to contact the police, I knew it wouldn't help. My mother can be very convincing when she wants to be, and the police have never believed me the previous times I went to them. One of my pals, whose we'll call Tom, came up with a terrific concept that would irritate her greatly but would not land me in trouble. Tom's father is a mechanic, thus he is familiar with cars. That day, after school, I joined him at his place. He showed me a location beneath the car between the top of the front wheel and the side of the engine and instructed me what to do. Bring on the pettiness. I had to wait a few days to exact my retribution, but the day has finally come. My mother and sister left the house to ride their horses, leaving me plenty of time to complete the necessary tasks. By the way, my sister was her golden kid until Mum began treating her similarly. But anyway, the next day I went grocery shopping with my mother and sister, and I was overjoyed to hear the results of my labor as the car began to drive down the driveway. Clink, clink. Yes, my readers, I attached a pebble to the end of the string inside the automobile, resulting in a loud clink every few seconds when the car was moving. Mum asked, "What the heck is that?" "Oh, I have no idea, Mum. Perhaps you should have the mechanic look at it." Remember how I mentioned that Tom's father is a mechanic? Well, he's the only mechanic in the town where we lived, and Tom made sure to inform his father about what my mother done. Needless to say, he sided with me. So after we finished our shopping, we went to the mechanic to have it looked at and repaired if necessary. As we got at the mechanic, Mom said, "Hi there, my car is making a strange noise while I'm driving, could you look into it for me?" "Sure, take a seat inside, and I'll take it for a test drive to see what the problem is." He got into the car and drove around the block. When he returned, the commotion had suddenly ceased. He charged my mother a check, and we were on our way, but not before Tom's father quietly handed me the rock back and gave me a wink and a smile as I walked away. That night I put the rock back in position and let it do its thing for the next day, and it was oh so satisfying. The problem returned the next day, so Mum went back to the mechanic, but this time he couldn't find anything wrong with it and couldn't hear any noise. I never bothered to take the rock out after that, and neither did the mechanic. He had first-hand knowledge of her entitlement and had heard numerous stories about her from other residents in town. The rock was not causing any damage or impacting the car's performance, thus nothing needed to be fixed. When I was 16, I moved away to live with my father, but the clink remained, hurting my mother every time she drove. I lost track of how many times she returned it to the technician and how much money she spent to get rid of the clink. When I last saw my mother, I was 23, and she still drove the same automobile. I expected the rock to have dropped out by then, but the car still had the clink, albeit not as loud. Thank you, Tom. So we're going to have a decade of constant clinking to drive this nasty woman insane. That seems like a modest form of retaliation for what she was putting you through. Also, while I understand that the rock is noteworthy for having lasted so long, I believe the string is considerably more astounding. Did you wrap that stone up with an adamantine thread? Here's hoping it haunts her until the automobile dies. However, it appears that you have long ago moved on from that dreadful woman, so we can only hope for the best. Furthermore, the narrator thought her minor side point about the mother and sister bonding over horses seemed familiar. So he checks. And this is the same author from our film My Mom Cancelled My Birthday and Gave My Sister 2 birthday parties instead, just to punish Maine. It kinda blows my mind. Based on what we've heard about her in that first story alone, the mother undoubtedly deserved this treatment. And I wonder how many more stories about her actions and her daughter's retaliation we'll hear in the future. I'd say we've already defeated the odds by having me voice 2 Mumzilla-themed videos in 2 weeks. I'm talking about all the text available on the World Wide Web. Keep your ears out for more, I suppose. Karen becomes enraged and accuses my baby of being queer. So I've heard a lot of stories on here, and I've never had anything remotely comparable to what I'd hear about on this channel. But then I had a child and somehow became a Karen magnet. This story has me and a crazy Karen in a baby lounge and feeding area. So I was changing my 5-month-old son's diaper when he had a massive poop explosion all up his back. Ah hey che. So I took what I had in my diaper bag, which was a pink bodysuit with only pink socks remaining. We expected a girl first and were shocked by a boy. So I saved the majority of our daughter's belongings, with the exception of socks and a few natural pink onesies, which I use for him. He was wearing his pink bodysuit and socks. He was eating and having a good time when a woman approached me. She'd been feeding across from me. What a cute baby. What is the name? It's Jonathan. The Karen makes a shocked Pikachu expression. You should not put pink on a boy. Why? Doesn't he mind at this age? I realize things are more alternative in this nation, but something like that will make your child queer. I don't care whether he is gay. Karen took a black onesie out of her purse. You can put this on him. Didn't you hear me? I do not care. At this moment, my son was distraught, so I grabbed our belongings and went. Karen had the last word as we left. F off, you and your homosexual son. I was just stunned. What in the universe makes a person think that's okay? So this was my day, and I simply needed to rant. Oh, and by the way, her baby was dressed in black and white stripes, so it was clearly a straight baby. Wow, do we even have to dispute who the jerk is in this story? Is anyone unsure about the outcomes here? Okay, I will spell it out. Karen is not a good guy. My gosh, lady. Stop watching Fox News. Stop believing that a gay agenda is grooming our children to be gay, and replace your jail stripe baby's clothes. If you believe that color schemes and patterns determine your children's future paths, this poses serious concerns. Seriously, these people. She was also completely nice and thought the kid was adorable, until she discovered that it did not adhere to the gender color parameters she had chosen. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have to find my fave salmon shirt. When you subscribe, be sure you tap the bell to enable notifications. Play the playlist in the background to continue listening to all of the stories.